Hello and welcome to Teaching Math. Today we're going to learn how to write linear equations from a table, which is kind of the same thing as writing it from 2 points. Let's take a look at our first example. Here's our first example, but let's make sure that we know the format that we're going to use for this equation. So for linear equation, we're going to use the y-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And this means that we're going to need to know the slope, which is the same thing as m, and we're going to need to know the y-intercept, and that is the same thing as b. So those are the two things that we're looking for. So I'm going to highlight this over here so you can clearly see. Those are the two things that we're looking for. First things first, we need to find the slope. So there's two ways to do that. One, using the slope equation, which will be m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And this is the most easiest and less confusing way to do it. Or the other way, you're going to have to just use your table and subtract y's from y's and x's from x's. Well, to do that, here's what we're going to do. So we have 2, and you can choose any 2 points. It doesn't matter which one. I always start from the bottom. Just stick to one way that you're doing this and keep it the same way, right? So we're going to have to do this, subtract both of this. So this means 2 minus -1, which is the same thing as saying 2 plus 1. And that will equal 3. Let's go ahead and write that. Those are the y's at the top. And then let's do the same thing for the x's. So we're going to have 1 minus 0, and that will equal 1. So our slope here is 3/1, which is the same thing as 3. It was that easy. So let's try and do this the same thing with an equation. So we're going to have y1 and y2. So what I tell my students is to write what would be your y2. I'm going to use a different color so it won't confuse you. So this will be your y2. And this will be your y1, this will be your x2, and this will be your x1. Now that you have that down, you can clearly see what you're doing here. Let's do the right color, and let's go ahead and do that. So now we have y2, which is -4, minus -7, that's my y1, divided by -1 minus -2. Now we have to rewrite this again because we have two negatives that will equal positive. So -4 plus 7 and -1 plus 2. And you can clearly see here that -4 plus 7 will equal 3. -1 plus 2 will equal 1. And we have the same answer. Now, which one you would choose to do, it's really up to you. But for me, it's the most important thing is organizing your information. Sometimes when the students use the table to find the slope, it becomes much more confusing. So you make that decision and then go with it. Okay, so now that we found the slope, we need to find our y-intercept. Okay, remember, y-intercept is a point where the line is crossing the y-axis. So I'm going to show you this visually so you can see. So when I draw a line in here, that is the point. And that point could be where x is 0, as you can see. And then let's pretend y is 2. So we're looking for a point in this table where it's showing us x is 0, and that will be our y-intercept. So let's go ahead and look at it in here, and you can clearly see that right over here, that is our y-intercept. That would be the point that the line will cross the y-axis. And if I draw that out, and I'm going to do that right now for you on a graph. Okay, so you will clearly see. So if I think about it, 0 and 1, that will be the point right over here. So as you can see, that is the point when the line will be crossing the y-axis. Okay, so let's go ahead and write those two information in there and then write our equation. So we learned that our slope is 3. So let's go ahead and write that. Slope is 3. And our y-intercept is -1. Okay, now we're ready for our equation. So let's move this just a bit higher. Remember, we're just substituting the m and the y-intercept, which will be the b. So we're going to rewrite this y equals. So instead of writing m, we're going to write 3x, and then this y-intercept is -1 minus 1, and that would be our equation. Okay, so let's take a look at another example where we do not have the y-intercept in the table. So let's take a look at this example. Again, we want to look for our m and our b. So m will be our slope, and then b will be our y-intercept in order to write this equation. We start with our slope. What is slope? Okay, again, we can use y2 minus y1 equation, x2 minus x1, or just use the graph. So I'm going to do both again just to show you how it's done. So let's use the graph in here, and let's go ahead and subtract 13 minus 11. Notice I always start from the bottom, and that is the method that I'm going to keep on using. I don't change things around. I don't start from the middle, but it really does not matter because it will still get the same answer. Okay, so 13 minus 11 equals 2, and then we have 4 minus 3 equals 1. Let's go ahead and write that. Okay. 4 minus 3 equals 1. Okay, so on this side we have 1. And again, I can do the same thing. 11 minus 9 equals 3, and then 3 minus 2 will equal 1 again. So it will be the same thing. Let's take a look how we're going to do this using the slope equation. So let's go ahead and erase this. Okay, so for this method, again, I'm going to label everything y2, y1, x2, x1. And labeling really helps me organize the information that I'm going to use. And so let's go ahead and do that. M equals, my y2 is 9, y1 is 7, and then x2 is 2, and then x1 is 1. And you can clearly see that M equals well, 9 minus 7 equals 2. 2 minus 1 equals 1. So our slope is 2. Now let's find the y-intercept. And I'm going to show you two ways, and you can decide which one is better for you to do it and which one you understand better. One will be we have to extend our table. So I'm going to rewrite the table in here so I can extend it. So this is my x and y. And so I'm going to start over here and write 1 and 7 and then 2 and 9. That's all I need to write because I'm extending and I want the x to be 0. That's where I'm going. So, okay, so let's go ahead and again, we remember here that we had to subtract 2, right? Each time we go upwards, we were subtracting 2. And then in here, each time we were going upwards, we were subtracting 1, right? As you can see, 2 minus 1. So, okay, let's go ahead and subtract 2 from 7, and therefore we will have 5. And then let's go ahead and subtract 1 from 1, and we will have 0. And there you have it. We found our y-intercept. The x is 0. That's where we want it. And then y is 5. Okay, so that is our y-intercept. Again, I'm going to show you visually how that looks. So if we have a graph, let's pretend that that is the point that we're talking about, and that is our y-intercept. Let's go ahead and write that our y-intercept is 5. Let me show you another way to do this. It is a longer way to do it, but we only use it when we're not so close and we extending the table, it's more confusing for you. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, one thing I want to do here is to find a y-intercept, I need few things. I need my x, I need a point. To find my y-intercept, this is what I need. I need a point, and I need a slope. Okay, so we can choose just any point from our graph. I'm going to do 1 and 7, 1, 7. And we notice that the slope is 2. Okay, that's all we need. And now what we're going to do is we're going to plug in our x, y, and the slope, because those are the things that we know. We know our x, we know our y, and we know our m. So let's go ahead and plug those in the equation. Y equals mx plus b. So instead of writing y, I'm going to write 7 equals, and instead of writing m, I'm going to say 2. 2 times 1 for x plus b, because we don't know what's b. So we're going to solve for b. All right, so 2 times 1 is 2 plus b. We're going to subtract 2 from both sides, and this will equal 5, which will be equaling b. Okay, we're ready to write our equation. So let's plug in the numbers we know. We know our slope and the y-intercept. So let's go ahead and write that down. Y equals, our slope is 2, so 2x plus 5, because 5 is a positive number, which is our y-intercept. Now, please remember that sometimes when we extend the table, it might be confusing, especially when the slope is negative, because at that point, to extend the table, you have to, instead of subtract, you have to add. So that might be a bit confusing. So using the algebraic version or knowing both ways to do it will be very helpful. Thank you for watching. If you learned something new, please subscribe to Teaching Math, and remember, learning math takes patience, practice, and perseverance. See you on the next one.